everyone, and welcome to this mini episode of Dogs Unknown. I'm your host, Sarah Fraser, here with fellow host Brian Burton. And we're doing a series of mini episodes for the summer. We took July off being off in quotes, I guess. We'll fill you in on that in a little bit. But yes, and back to do some shorter episodes for August and September before we come back with season 4 in October. So very happy to be here. And I think we have some good little topics lined up over the next little while, including several episodes with Instinct clients as guests that I think people will really enjoy.
Totally.
Yeah. But before we dive into the episode, Brian, do you want to fill people in on what we've been up to for the month of July? It's not been summer fun necessarily.
Yeah, it's been busy. We moved from New York City to Nova Scotia, and that might seem a little odd to people, I guess, hearing that, especially people who don't really know much about us. I think most people in the dog world know that we own, that we're the co-founders of Instinct, and our facility, the New York facility, is ours. We have multiple facilities across the country with like different local owners. And we had a daughter 6 or 7 months ago now, and decided that through that process, it might be good to be around family. So we packed up and moved, and we are back in Nova Scotia. So that's why our Dunkin' Donuts coffees have switched to Tim Hortons coffees. So,
and I guess, yes, goes without saying with all of that Brian and I both were born in and grew up in Nova Scotia, Canada, before we moved to New York decades ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So New York is also still home, but we have relocated to one of our other homes now, Nova Scotia, so that, yes, our daughter Sylvie can spend more time around her cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those New York City clients, just so you know, we do have another part owner there, Trina Walsh, who's amazing and runs that facility, as Sarah and I really over the past number of years have been focused on growing Instinct and doing other things. So we're not really an on-site presence, but we'll still be involved in all the ways that we usually are. We're just in Nova Scotia to have Sylvie around family. So super exciting.
Adjusting to Canada life.
Yeah.
And so far,
it's windy.
The snacks, A+.
Yeah. Yeah. The chip situation is definitely A+ here.
Candy bars in Canada get a nod, in my opinion.
Yes.
But there are a lot of things we sure do miss about New York City.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's also very windy here. Very windy.
It is.
And very cloudy.
Okay. So all that being said, since this is a mini episode, and we promise not to talk about the clouds every episode, let's move forward. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today was about, I guess it's been a couple of months ago now. Brian, was back in May.
Yep.
May the 4th, actually, that we posted a video on our Instinct Instagram account called How Not to Pet a Dog.
Yes.
And that video starred helper dog Moses, and it reviewed 5 simple things to try to avoid doing when greeting a dog to make sure that the dog stays comfortable and that you stay safe. And that video has gotten over 2 million views at this point.
Yep.
And got a whole bunch of engagement, a lot of comments, some really great, some really interesting, and some really, truthfully, just kind of made me sort of sad.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And we thought it would be a really good opportunity to talk about, for one, why this video is important to all of us as dog owners. But then secondly, how it's kind of an example of one of the tricky things about dogs and living with dogs is that because they're so familiar to us, because we feel like we know them so well, it can leave us in a position where there's big blind spots in our actual knowledge and understanding of their behavior and what they need. And when we're confronted with that, maybe there's been a misunderstanding, there can be different reactions to that. We can have different reactions or responses to that. And I think we've all run up against that as folks with dogs, especially if we've gone on a training or a behavior journey. There have probably been times where we've been confronted with new information and thought, oh, shoot, my perception of that was totally different. So starting off just about the how not to greet a dog, the actual video. So some of the I think there were 5.
Yeah.
The 5 knots.
Yeah. And for anyone who hasn't seen the video, we'll put the link in our in the show notes. So you definitely go watch it first.
Yes, definitely. So the 5 don'ts were the old extending the back of your hand out toward a dog for them to sniff. You know, really kind of exaggerated. I was taught this. Were you as well?
100%.
Yeah, I think we all were, as like, this is a safe way to not just reach out and pet. The intent was, don't just reach out and pet a dog. Good intent, not so great in practice.
Yeah.
But so reaching the hand out to pet a dog, there's the leaning over a dog to say hello, the face cuddle. Whew.
Yeah.
That's a scary one.
A lot of bites there.
Mm-hmm. The hug. We love to hug dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They're not so much a fan, even though a lot of them are a fan of cuddles and other types of attention. Did I miss one? Was that 4?
I think that was 4. The lean over, the face cuddle.
The head pat.
The head pat.
Yes. The head pat was the other one.
Yeah.
So thump, thump, thump.
Yes.
On the head. So those are the 5. And these are not universal. There's going to be an exception out there. But more often than not, even if it's eliciting from you the response of like, hey, but my dog loves that. They may. The potentially more likely scenario is that your dog tolerates that type of greeting, or they may have other types of greetings that they prefer more, but they put up with it because they love you so much, or they love people so much that they're like, my human doesn't really know my favorite ways of greeting, but it's okay because I love them and I'll let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that, Brian, before we get into sort of the different types of responses and comments.
I think I'm good.
You're good?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if there were any there listed that were surprising to you all. Like I said, the extended hand to sniff, I think, is the one that evoked a lot of emotion from people.
Yeah, it did.
Most consistently, because it's been presented as a safe alternative to help dogs feel more comfortable, right? Dogs love to sniff, give them an opportunity to sniff your hand. And, but I think some of the other ones too, things like the hug, people take great offense to.
Yes.
You know, the like, don't tell me I can't hug my dog sort of response that can be challenging. But so I think there were a few different themes in the comments. There were lots and lots of people that said like, first there was a whole set of people that said, thank you so much. My dog will be very appreciative of people receiving this information, because folks identified with seeing in their own dog, like, hey, my dog struggles with those types of greetings with people. So I would love it if people knew to avoid these handful of things when greeting a dog, right? Like, my dog really finds it yucky to be thumped on the head, or my dog really struggles if someone leans over into their space, or, you know, if they reach a hand out into their personal space, they have a hard time. So that was a collection of comments of people, I think, just feeling seen and feeling like their own dog was represented.
Totally.
Then there was a set of comments that were like, wow, this is so helpful. Thank you. I didn't know. You know, I didn't know that this was the case. And so thanks. You know, great info. The next 2 sets of categories, and certainly I'm all for, you know, we love happy debates and disagreements. You know, it's fun to have those, certainly. But the next sets of comments. So one was this dangerous, the whole personal anecdote experience. There was a lot of folks who shared, hey, I've always done X and it's never been a problem for me personally, meaning I've never been bitten. Not necessarily, and all the dogs loved it, and I've always been fine. And therefore, it's not an issue. And that's really hard because, I mean, we only have our personal experiences to go on a lot of times, right? Like, it's going to shape a lot of our perspective about stuff. But that's challenging. You know, it's just because something has never personally been a problem for you doesn't make it not true. And I don't know about you, Brian, I feel like we run up against this a lot with clients who have dogs who come to them or who grow into certain behavior challenges.
Yeah.
And if they have friends or family or acquaintances or people on the street who've never personally had that experience with a dog, they have a hard time. They get a lot of pushback about like, it must not be that bad, or you must just be doing something wrong, you know, or you're exaggerating, or, you know, they just don't quite believe it because they haven't experienced it themselves. And that's really hard.
Yeah. It's super hard, and it puts people in really awkward situations, and sometimes like dangerous situations as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I personally find it one of the more frustrating issues, because at the end of the day, like, you might even disagree, whatever, but I think what's important is, even if you disagree that this dog is comfortable, or like this is comfortable, if an owner tells you that their dog is uncomfortable with it, whether you agree or not, like, back the F off.
Yeah.
like that's not your call. Like they're telling you that their dog is uncomfortable with something. So if they're telling you that, even if you disagree with them, just listen. The worst case scenario there is far more extreme than the best case scenario on the other side. So I don't know, like that's sort of how I feel. And I feel like that's where my frustration comes a lot is this isn't about you. Like it's not about you, right? Especially if it's a dog that is not your dog, like that is not your call to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I get that sort of knee jerk response too of someone saying to you, especially if you consider yourself someone who really loves dogs or who maybe is good or like skilled with dogs. And if someone confronts you with information saying like, hey, what you're doing is less than ideal.
Yep.
Then defenses go up, right? Like that's so normal for us to just kind of get defensive and say like, well, hey, it's not been a problem for me.
Yeah.
I disagree with you. You know, although it's usually not I disagree with you. It's just a really emphatic wrong.
God, the comments.
Those are my favorite ones.
The comments that just said wrong. And there was a few of them. It was just like, you know, and again, like people can disagree. I mean, I don't, you know, that's.
Of course.
You know, but.
I think it's being open to the idea that just because you haven't personally had this experience doesn't necessarily make it untrue or doesn't make it that it's not true for a lot of other people or a lot of other dogs.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the other thing is just like, are there dogs who like head thumps? I'm sure there's like a few out there that do like it. Are there some dogs who like hugs? There's probably some who do like that out there or in certain contexts. And
I want to say, though, I just want to say this because I hear that a lot. A hug means you reaching out into the dog's space and squeezing them.
Right.
We're not referring to a dog who likes to come in and lean against you and maybe lean into your arm and get some snuggles like that. It's you walking up to them, putting your arms around them and giving them a squeeze. Yeah.
And I think the thing is even if like, let's just say your dog is one of the 1 in 10,000 that like that, the other 9,999 don't.
Right.
And at best case, they're going to tolerate it. And worst case, they're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And so, and we've seen that. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like we've worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of dogs. We've worked with people where they come in after a bite happens, or we work with people and a bite happens. And there are countless examples of bites that happen because they don't follow the reasonable guidelines of an owner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, especially like face cuddling is an example, like telling someone like, don't face cuddle my dog, and constantly sticking their face in the, like in the dog's face, like all weekend. And finally on the Sunday, it's like the dog's had enough and it's like, get lost.
Yeah.
You know, and then unfortunately then it's like the dog takes all the blame for it.
Yeah.
Or the owner. And it's really frustrating. So I think that's also like where we're coming from that perspective. And also it's just sort of like, if we suspect a dog doesn't like something, to keep doing it over and over. Like, and I get like, if it's your own dog, like there's always like within a relationship, there's social.
There can be a bit of a give and take there.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I like doing this. You don't love it, but we kind of do it for each other. I don't like picking up your poop either, or like doing different things. Like I'm going to do certain things for you that, you know, because we kind of have that give and take. It's a different relationship. But if it's a dog we don't have a relationship with, it's selfish.
Well, I think that leads us into that next collection of comments.
Right.
Right. So there were the folks who said, I haven't had that personal experience, so not true. Right. And then there was another whole set of comments, and those ones I understand. Right. Like that's, especially you're watching a video on Instagram, right? Like you've not sought out educational content or necessarily, and it comes across your feed and someone just fires off like, nope, not right. Not my experience. Like you expect those.
Yeah.
And you just put out more and more information, and you hope that it lands at a certain point in some time, and maybe you've planted a seed. And if they see that info again, then I might be like, maybe they're onto something here, you know? But the last set of comments are the ones that I think I found largely just sad.
Very.
You know, I mean, like made me feel sad. And those are the comments where people basically just said, I don't give a shit how the dog feels. I'm going to greet them how I want. Right? There's like this sense of entitlement that comes with our relationships with dogs that some folks have, that some people have, that's just like, this is a dog, the dog is mine, or dogs are public property, and we should be able to do with them as we wish. And that just sucks.
Yeah.
Like those are just such yucky comments, in terms of like what they reflect as a perspective and a viewpoint around dogs. I think especially because we always tend to view like, people do love their dogs. For the most part, people love dogs so much. Nothing about that comment reflects that you love dogs.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely not. And there were quite a few of those.
There were.
And I was actually a little, I know the internet's a strange place, but I did not expect to see so many of those. Yeah, but I think it also highlights like how important it is for messages like this to get out. And this is like a point in time where like being an advocate for dogs is really important. The good news is like most people are receptive to it. Like most people are like, oh, I didn't realize that. Or like, oh, really? Like when I've done it, when I suck my hand out, like they sniff my hand and then come in for more. Like you can have like nuanced discussions about it.
Absolutely.
And most people are interested. And there's lots of people saying, oh, wow, like I didn't know that. I'm going to do things differently. So I think that's the good news. But I will say if you have a family member or a friend who kind of falls more in that other one and doesn't take your guidelines about how to interact with your dog, whether they have a bite history or not. Like I'm not even talking about dogs with dogs with bite history require a whole other set of management and things. But let's just put that to the side. Even if your dog likes people and someone's interacting with them in a way that they don't like, it's okay to step in and like remove your dog from those situations.
Yes.
And like your dog will thank you for it. Yeah. Because I think the thing is too, is like just because a dog doesn't bite doesn't mean that they're enjoying themselves.
Right.
Right. And that's where too, I think, dog body language, I know we talk about that a lot, but like if you watch that video, like there's nothing in Mo's body language that he enjoys.
Absolutely not.
Because there were even some people saying like, I think there was even some comments that he seems like he likes it or something. It was like, and it's
well, and that one, that's another window to say like, hey, that's a lot easier to understand. Like, oh, you're actually and there are different species, right? Like we don't come knowing this stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you perceive him as enjoying those interactions, why would you think there's anything wrong with those types of interactions?
Right.
So that really is like, that's the education piece is like, oh, you're just missing a set of information about the ethogram of a different species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally fair.
Yep.
Totally fair.
And honestly, like even in the early days when I trained dogs, I wasn't as attuned to it as I am now. Like, I feel like now it's more like it's like really loud communication. Mm-hmm. And if you really train yourself to listen for it, it's a really nice skill to have because you feel like, your dog can tell you things.
Right.
But it's not super intuitive.
No.
And you do have to practice it. And you do have to watch some YouTube videos on body language or go to the dog park and watch. Like because there's lots of people who find this stuff really interesting. Mm-hmm. And so like whether you have like dogs around that you can sort of watch them and watch their body language when they're interacting with each other or interacting with someone else or be the creep at the dog park and sit outside and watch the dog, watch the body language in the dogs at a dog park. Like that's one of the ways I think we learned a lot way back early on. It's like, you're like, okay, I saw his tail went back or his tail went down a little here, his ears went back, or actually his ears went forward there. Yep. And then a scuffle really broke out. Or for another dog might be like going way back. And so you can actually see that and you're not looking after your own dog at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good place to go. And actually, if you're really into this, to go do that, because you will learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
Combined with watching stuff online. There's lots of good resources out there.
Absolutely. And so, not to suggest that comments on the internet reflect views of proportion wise reflect the views of people in public because I hope not.
Yeah.
When
you get 2 million views on a video, it's unfortunately
it attracts polarization.
And just louder voices usually.
But I think it's a good thing to talk through because again, we just see it play out in other ways with dogs.
Yeah.
I know this to be true because I've had dogs my whole life.
Yeah.
We just sort of can approach things that way. But I think the other thing, especially with those second two types of comments, and Brian, you started to touch on this a little bit as well, is just as a dog owner, being aware that there are people moving through the world who have both sets of those views. I know what I know, and I know that greeting dogs this way is okay. So even if someone tells me otherwise, I'm going to still try to do what I do and what I'm comfortable with and what has quote unquote worked for me. And there's other people who just may not care a ton. Right. And so it's really important. And I know you started to say this as like, we talk about this with our entire teams, but I think this is something we stress with our care team, like backbone of instinct at anywhere there's an instinct facility or canine care team members, is we are looking to hire dog advocates, not necessarily dog lovers.
Yes.
And so as a dog owner, embrace being a dog advocate. And that means I'm going to show up for my dog and do what needs to be done to make sure that they feel safe and comfortable and have a good experience today, as best I can, with what's in my control. So, shedding some of that pressure we put on ourselves to just kind of avoid social conflict or confrontation or just discomfort by telling someone, hey, don't do that, or hey, my dog needs space.
Yeah.
I always say the easiest thing to do that if you're not super comfortable telling someone, no, don't do that, is just act like you're really invested in talking with your dog and walk away. Right? Like just be like, oh, hi, Mosey. You look so cute today. Let's go, buddy. Good job. And don't even look at the person.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh,
yeah,
she was really into training her dog right now. You don't even have to acknowledge them.
Yeah.
Just put all your focus on your dog and create some space.
Yeah.
Whenever that's an option.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's sort of like there's a difference between somebody playing with your dog or playing with your dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. We talk about that different times. It's sort of like, are they a plaything or are they a playmate? Playmate means we're playing together and we're having a good time.
Right.
Plaything means you're there for me to, have fun with.
Yeah.
And I don't really care how you feel.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's like a lot of times, like even with my own dogs, when I look at stuff, it's like, are people actually trying to engage with my dog? Because if so, you can say, oh, like they actually like to do this, or like you can like redirect them. You don't have to get into like not doing stuff. A lot of times you say, hey, they really like scratches behind the ears, or they really like playing fetch. Hey, do you want to throw in his ball for him? Oh yeah, sure. Like you can just kind of redirect people because they're actually sincerely trying to engage with the dog, and you don't have to turn it into a lecture, right? But if you see someone who's like playing with your dog and like kind of purposely tormenting them or trying to get a rise out of them, sounds like someone giving like noogies or something. Like, I don't know if there's really been many people who've gotten noogies who've enjoyed it.
No.
Right. It's usually the bully who's giving the noogies that's enjoying it. And like, that's what it looks like to me. Yeah. And like, that's sort of my thing. If someone's trying to just playing with my dog like they're a thing, it's like, okay, it's like, time to stop.
Yeah, so. Definitely. So yeah, thought it would be fun and worthwhile to go through that, the response to that video, just as it relates to sort of broader topic of our understanding of dogs and the different reactions that can bring when we're confronted with information that's different than maybe what beliefs we've held in the past.
Yeah.
But so that kicks off the first of our mini episodes, and looking forward to doing more.
All right. See you soon.
See you next time.